Hi. I looked at our Google Sheet where we're doing the Dupont analysis exercise, and I see that Yoshi and Laurel were the first two to put their work up. Um, and so I'm going to kind of reward Yoshi this morning, since he was the very first one, by working through the A&A Dupont analysis. Thing that I noticed when I got on here is that for ROE, this number ROE 0.04004 is different when you come over here, and that's in the advanced Dupont. So that kind of bothered me, and I noticed the same thing with Laurel's as well. And so that should not be the case. ROE is ROE, and it should always be the same. Now let's take a look at it. So I created something called the A&A example, and I put it up here, and it's another sheet that's available to you. Please don't write over this sheet. This is you can write over other lines down here if you want, but don't write over rows 1 and 2, and I might be able to protect that, I don't know, but just don't write over it for now. But let's take a look, and here's what I did, is if we go back to the slides, and I have the original slides, you have the PDF. So we're going to look at the basic DuPont model. And it's net income divided by sales, sales divided by assets, assets divided by equity. So let's put those things into go off to the financial statements. Yoshi has A&A, and this is the A&A annual report. If you're interested, you can go there. It is for the year ended March 31, 2015, and I'm on PDF page 82 of that report. And so we're looking there, and I'm going to take, and the first thing I'm going to do is find net income, 39,239, and sales as well. Net income is this bottom line right here, 39,239. And sales is not really, but it's the top line on the income statement. We're going to use operating revenues, 1 million, I guess that's 1,713,000. And so I took and put those numbers in here. Now recall that when we do the anything off of the balance sheet, and we walked through in class on Tuesday why, but anything off of the balance sheet, we should have an average. So let's look at assets, 2,302,000. Well, that's going to be off the balance sheet. Oops, wrong direction. That's the liabilities and total assets, 2,302,437. Notice that 2,173,607 is the prior year, and you can see that up here. These are at March 31, 2015 and 14. So you can see that 2,302,437 is the end of the current year, and 2,173,607 is the end of the prior year. And to get the average assets, I take those two, add them together, and divide by 2. Same thing with equity. So you see 798,280 right here and 746. Equity is going to be down here. And the first one is total, what they refer to as net assets. Remember, owner's equity is total assets minus liabilities. Some people refer, and maybe some cultures or places, countries in the world refer to that as net assets. So it's 803,552, but we don't include the minority interest of 5272 because minority interest is provided by other investors. So the equity is going to be the 803,552 minus the 5272, which is the minority interest. Just to be clear, minority interest is, or non-controlling interest, is the portion of the subsidiaries that the parent company does not own. And we do the same thing in 2014, where we have 751,291 minus 5221. That's these two numbers here, 751 minus the 5221. And we are considering only the common equity. Notice that we don't have any preferred stock up here, so we don't have to subtract that. But we do subtract minority interests or non-controlling interests. So again, we're going to do the average of the of these two. The end plus the beginning divided by 2 is the 772,175. So if we just do a base ROE, that is, we take net income, that's B2, divided by I2, which is our average equity. And this is just return on equity. We get 0.0508. Now I've got all the decimals in there and I just left it the way it is. I don't care. I said 2 decimals, but please don't worry about that. Just don't use percentage because it's hard to combine percentages and decimals. Now, let's go on and do the basic Dupont. The profit margin is net income divided by sales. So that's going to be B divided by C. Net income divided by sales. B2 divided by C2. The asset turnover is going to be sales divided by average assets. So sales is C2 divided by F2, which is our average assets. And the leverage, which is going to be the assets divided by the equity. And keep in mind that we're doing the average because those are coming from the balance sheet. So we're going to take average assets, we're doing leverage. F2 divided by average equity, I2. And we can see that if we multiply those across, K2 times L2 times M2, we get 0.0508. And we can see that the profit margin is really only about 2 cents or 2 yen on 100 yen. And they turn over their assets about 3/4 of the total assets come back in terms of sales each year, but they have a lot of leverage, almost $3 or 3 yen of assets for every 1 yen of equity provided by the common stockholders. So that's the basic Dupont. Now let's move on to the advanced Dupont. In the advanced Dupont, we're going to follow the slide here, terms for the advanced Dupont. And I'm just going to define each of these terms in the spreadsheet terms. So we go back over here. The first thing we're going to do is the tax rate. And the tax rate is going to be equal to the tax expense, 37,956, divided by the pre-tax income, 77,983. Now let's take a look at that. On the income statement, tax expense is 37,956 divided by 77,983. And so that's our tax rate, 48.7%. And Japan is one of the few advanced countries in the world with a higher tax rate than the United States, corporate tax rate. Net financing expense is going to be the cost of after-tax interest, preferred dividends if we have any, and we don't in the A&A's case, and the minority interest that's in net income, and we do have that. So let's take a look at non-financial or net financial expense or financing expense, and we're going to go back and see the 13,732 is our interest expense. Let me show that to you. Up here we see that we have interest expense 13,732, and we come back and we're going to say, well, but it's only the part that's not it's after tax. That's after tax. Minus 1 times 1 minus the tax rate. Well, the tax rate is 0.2. So that's the cell. So 1 minus the tax rate. And then we're also going to add, since financing expense includes all of the costs of other investors in the company, and other investors in the company, other than common stockholders in the parent company, includes minority investors or non-controlling interests. And so we go back over to this, and you see that the minority interest is 788 for the current year. And this is an income statement item, so we don't have to average the things on the income statement. We just average the things on the balance sheet. So we're going to add the 788, which is the minority interest part that's in net income. Net operating income is going to be equal to net income, which we had over in B2. All the way back, we defined it for the basic Dupont as 39,239, plus the net financing expense. Okay, so what we're trying to do with an NOI, or net operating income, is provide an income that's there to take care of all of the investors. So this is the income that can be used to satisfy common stockholders. It can be used to satisfy the creditors, which is the interest. So we're adding back that. So we're going to add back as well as the minority stockholders. So that's P2. So we're going to add B2, which is net income, and the non-financing or net financing expense there. And that gets us the net operating income. Now, the next two items, net financial obligations and net operating assets, those are balance sheet items. So you got to remember to use average balance sheet items. Net financing obligations. So you see we've got the 609, 802, 744, and 160. Let's take a look. This is off of the balance sheet. And for the current year, I call that year T. This is the long-term debt. I forget those numbers so quick. 744 is the asset retirement obligations, and I didn't know what that was, so I looked at note 8, and sure enough, there's interest on that. And anything that has interest, we're going to include. We're also going to include this is the pension obligations. That's going to be included. So we add that. So that's the 160. And then we also have the current liabilities that have interest on them. And that's the 210,029 for the short-term loans, as well as the asset retirement obligations of 81. And then we're going to include the minority interest, because they also have to be taken care of. And so that's going to be the 5272. And then you want to do T minus 1. That is last year. T is this year. last year is, T is 2015, T minus 1 is 2014. And so we want to do the same thing with the prior year. And all of those numbers come off of the prior year balance sheet. So if you wanted to see them, they're going to be in this column over here. We would start with the 646. We would include the asset retirement obligations, the pension benefit obligations, the short-term loans, the asset retirement obligations, and the minority interest from 2014. And that will get us this number, the net financing obligations from the prior year. Now, for the overall average, we add them together. R plus S is equal to divided by 2 is here. Net operating assets for year T, well, remember you can define that two ways. You can take the total assets, subtracting all of the liabilities that are non-interest bearing. I like to do it a slightly different approach, and I just use the net financing obligations plus the common equity, G2. So G2 is our equity at year T, and we have the net financing obligations, which is for year T right here. So if we look here at NOA, it's R2, which is the net financial obligations, plus G2, which is the equity, common equity at the end of the year. And that gets us this number. And then we do the same thing for the prior year. So we have the net financial obligations for the prior year, that's S2, plus H2, which is the equity, common equity for the prior year. And then to get the average, we add them together and divide by 2. When we do the RNOA, we take the net operating income, Q2, divided by W2, net operating assets, and that gets us the RNOA. And then we take the net borrowing cost, which is the net financing expense, divided by the net financial obligations. And all of this is coming off of the slide here. This slide and the next one, which is right here. And those slides you have in PDF. All right, so we've got the net operating assets defined, and then the RNOA is defined as net operating income, that's Q2, divided by net operating assets, that's W2, and you can see that right here. The net borrowing cost is the net financing expense, which is which is P2, that's this one over here, net financing expense, divided by net financial obligations, which is T2 here. So now we can take this RNOA, and this is where we get into the basic, the advanced Dupont. We have RNOA plus the spread, and the spread is the excess of the RNOA over the net borrowing costs. So we have Z2 RNOA minus Y2, and so we're earning for every dollar that's available to pay everybody, all of the investors, but we only have to pay back the creditors 0.0078. Everybody knows that this is less than 1%, which they have negative inflation in Japan, so that's not really a surprise that that's very, very low. So we have this spread that the common equity holders get, and that is 0.0187. So they have an overall return to all of the investors, plus they have a spread over the cost of the outside investment, which is the debt. And that spread goes to the common stockholders. So we have the RONA plus the spread times the amount of equity, the amount of debt that we use, non-common equity or investment in the company. And that is debt to equity. So we're going to take the spread times the financial leverage, the amount of OPM or other people's money that we're using. And that gives us the sort of leverage effect on the income that comes to the common stockholders. And so we take the spread times the amount of leverage and add that to the RNOA, and we end up with ROE. And there it is. ROE is equal to the RNOA Z2 plus the spread times the leverage, the financial leverage. And we end up with ROE 0.050816, which is the same as the ROE basic DuPont, which is also the same as the ROE base, which is just net income divided by average equity. So there you have a breakdown, an example, and I'm going to leave this, we'll call this ANA example as a spreadsheet. And all that Yoshi needs to do is to take these numbers that I've already calculated. He got lucky, and not just luck because he played a leadership role and he got out there and did it, but he just needs to take these numbers off of the basic DuPont and off of the advanced DuPont, which is over here, and put them over here into the main sheet, which is right here. And then he's done.